Peter Lim has decided to get rid of Marcelino and possibly as well of the CEO, Matteo Alemany. And you must be wondering why that is, when actually Valencia had a fantastic season last season, won the Cup, qualified for the Champions League, played wonderful football, especially in the second half of the season. And the reason is because them two, Matteo Alemany and Marcelino, who have linked themselves from the beginning. There was a possibility at some point of Matteo Alemany resigning, and Marcelino said that if Matteo Alemany goes, he will go as well. Well, them two and Peter Lim understand the club completely different. Peter Lim being the owner, but not being there ever present, although he's got obviously representatives of the club, basically feels that it's a place where he has to mix the business side, that is making money, and the sporting side. In the past, that mix didn't work very well. He had felt that for a while, that since the arrival of Matteo Alemany, Valencia knew where they were going in terms of how to balance those two things. But this summer, the understanding of where to move on from here, where to go to, it was completely different between Matteo Alemany and Marcelino on the one hand and Peter Lim the other. Two situations reached a stage in which it seemed like, to Peter Lim anyway, there was no way they could continue working together. One was Rafinha, the player that Marcelino wanted at Valencia on loan from Barcelona, with the possibility of buying him maybe later, and Rodrigo. Peter Lim felt that Rafinha wasn't a player for Valencia. He felt that he wasn't, with his injury history and the fact that he never has reached the potential that we all thought he could have, and he may still get there, closer to 30 than to 20 years old. All those reasons were for Peter Lim a good reason not to move on with the possibility of getting him on loan, even though the player was happy to come to Valencia. Secondly, Peter Lim decided that as part of the situation with the club, a financial situation, it was a good deal to actually let Rodrigo go to Atletico Madrid. So an agreement was reached between Valencia and Atletico Madrid for really the best or the most consistent player that Valencia have, which is Rodrigo, for 60 million euros. And basically Marcelino, Matteo Alemany a bit less, but Marcelino especially, showed that he was not in agreement with that decision. So a lot of the press conferences, which were followed very closely by Peter Lim from Marcelino, were to say, you know, there's nothing we can do. So when Peter Lim started hearing those things, I think it became clear for him that he wanted people in charge of the club, in the day-to-day running of the club, that were more in line with what he was thinking. Now, a lot of people have lined up with Marcelino and Matteo Alemany, partly because they're local Spanish, partly because they don't see Peter Lim, partly because they understand that's not a thing to do after Valencia managed to get the Cup last season and qualify for the Champions League, so well above the targets that were put to them. So it makes sense that those criticisms arrive to Peter Lim, but I can say as well that when you are in a club and your owner, the one who decides the big decisions, has got a way of thinking, and you have another, that will always break. Peter Lim, as we know, is very close to Giorgio Mendes, the agent who's brought about 5 or 6 players to the club, and that is also a source of bitterness in the local camp, if you like, amongst fans and also the journalists. So you're talking about a club that has got a lot of potential with young players. Rodrigo, now that he's staying, now that Atletico Madrid could not find the money to actually get him for the 60 million that was agreed to, he's going to have to focus, of course. There's much more expected from Guedes, especially without the ball, but also with it, more consistency. There is potentially one of the, well, last time a whole league was played, Valencia was one of the top 4 teams in Spain, and still looks like they could get there. It'd be interesting to see Albert Celades, the former Spain under-21 manager, in charge, a young manager, if you like, with not a huge amount of experience in the first division, of course, but with a style that people will enjoy. That also it's something that Peter Lim particularly didn't like. Some of the football that Valencia played was too much on the counter-attacking side, too much on the defensive, too much on the back foot. Celades is a different type of manager. I don't think that questioning of the style is something that became very relevant at the moment of taking a decision in respect of Marcelino, because he's, well, as I said, he's punched well above his weight. But what we will see, I think, is a different Valencia, and that could be interesting. The players are there. There are centre-backs that can play the ball. There are full-backs that like to go forward. There are midfielders that also like to pressure high and to want the ball. So perhaps that change of style will placate some, but unless results arrive, there is enough reasons there for Valencia fans to be unhappy, and it is the fact that, a very controversial decision has been taken, but also that it's been taken by somebody who's far away from the club. There is the feeling from fans, from commentators, that Peter Lim doesn't really understand the club, that he has it as a business. As I said, that's on the back of the decision taken today, or that's about to be taken. And next, Celades will have to not just alienate himself with the boss. That's why he knows what he's coming to, but also to convince the fans that he's the manager to take Valencia to where it belongs, which is good result against Barcelona and Chelsea. The next two games will help, but generally a fight for the top four.